Professor Sethulego Matebesi, joining us now for some analysis of what we saw this weekend. Professor, good evening to you. Thank you for your time. Let's get your thoughts first on how the National Convention went.
Hi, good evening, sir, and good evening to the viewers. I think, well, if you are an organizer, perhaps the starting point will be there are mixed reactions to what happened over the weekend, because we saw an extremely slow start and also some participants or delegates very critical of the process. But I think one resounding success for the organizers is that at least there's an agreement going forward that a steering committee should be established or will be established, and that steering committee will oversee the process going forward. So in that regard, I think, yes, it started off very slowly, but perhaps there's a lot of confidence in those who are behind the organization or organizing this particular national dialogue.
A number of organizations pulling out, and let's be clear, these are legacy foundations, political parties. The latest foundation is that under the stewardship of President Kgalema Motlanthe. The credibility of this entire process, Professor Matebesi, do you think there is anything to be said about that, or is that something that is being overplayed? These processes, as one of the eminent persons described it to me, was that these are part and parcel of a democracy. It was never going to be smooth to begin with.
Yes, well, you said it quite well. I've got my own opinion. I've got my own stance about the national dialogue in itself, and perhaps actually whether it will yield any tangible outcomes. But one should be very cautious to say that when democratic means are utilized to achieve an objective, irrespective of whether you agree with that, that is within our, constitution. This is what our constitutional democracy allows. Then one will want to say, yes, perhaps this is the way to go. But and if certain organizations are pulling out, they are pulling out to what we have already stated from the outset, to say, but at least what the current government can do is to demonstrate that it is serious about taking action against those who are earning a huge salary at the cost of the taxpayer. And it seems as if nothing is happening to them. Now we have this national talk shop, because I can't, define it in any other way, because it is a talk shop where you've got legal means. I mean, you've got commissions of inquiry, you've got the public protector, Chapter 9 institutions making recommendations, and those recommendations are just ignored. So why do we South Africans now have to have the confidence that at the end of this national dialogue, some of these recommendations will be implemented? And I think that is my starting point. But one can never equate when a certain organization withdraws, then one questions the credibility. It's commendable that today South Africans, irrespective of our different opinions, different affiliations, can still converge to deliberate about issues of national importance. That, for me, is quite credible, and it once again is indicative of the kind of democracy that we have in South Africa.
Yeah, I'm glad that you injected a bit of your own opinion about this process, Professor, because at the end of the day, you and I are South Africans, and our views matter as well. And so let me probe you further on that, because listening to people, I was listening to this one gentleman on the radio one night driving home, and he says it simply amazes him that President Ramaphosa needs a talk shop, as you've described it, like this one, in order for him to understand the problems of this country. To him, he says, he thought South Africa's problems were all clear for all to see. Why does he need a forum to tell him what is wrong with the country? What perhaps should be the issue here is what is being done and what is it with implementation that is faltering in order to solve South Africa's problems. Is he wrong?
No, it has always been my stance to say, I mean, after so many studies, in fact, our 30 years, 3 decades of democracy has already yielded some lessons as to what needs to be done. And that's why for some of us, the national dialogue, it's yet once again just to divert the attention on what needs to be done. And I should start with the presidency. As the chief executive officer of this country, the president should first come out and say, but why are actions not being taken against those sitting in municipalities and sitting in provincial governments where there are credible evidence? And this is not coming from some scholar sitting at a certain tertiary institution. This is coming from the Auditor General reports. And you know what we do? We celebrate if there's significant, slight improvement on all these horrible reports that we see year on, and then somebody will come and say, at least there seems to be progress. There can't be progress when we talk about billions and billions of taxpayers' money. There can't be any significant progress when we talk about the lack of accountability and consequence management. And this is the kind of things. We've seen what is happening within our police service. We've seen what is happening at local government level with our municipalities, our schools, which have become battlegrounds. South Africa is a crime haven. And the question is, why do we not have credible or tangible solutions to these problems? And perhaps that is where the starting point should be. And it's not about what are the issues. I think by now, everyone in South Africa knows, as you've correctly stated, what our fundamental challenges are. And perhaps the question is to ask our leaders, they should be on stage to say, but why and what have they done to deal with these, these challenges, and why, in any case, they haven't dealt with some of these challenges.
Professor Matebesi, I want to end the conversation on this score because this is something that I don't know if looking at it I'm looking at it at face value, perhaps. And I'm going to quote the political economist I spoke to here, Mr. Mweletsi Mbeki, who said that it would be lazy journalism to look at the disagreements over the process of the national dialogue and all of these problems that are being reported about now and make it a fight between a sitting president and a retired president. But the more I read statements coming out of the Mbeki Foundation, the more it seems that this is a process that I think he would want to own, although there is the understanding on his part that the sitting government should perhaps be a party to this and, I guess, take care of some of the issues here. I'm asking you this question, Professor, with this question in mind, and that is that, do you foresee two parallel national dialogues taking place at some point? Because if that letter coming from Ms. Geraldine Fraser-Moleketi from the Mbeki Foundation, I think it spells it out that President Mbeki has no regard whatsoever for the process that has just taken place. If anything, he actually sees it as something that is completely discredited. Am I wrong in asking you the question whether we're likely to see two parallel processes that are going to be seeking to debate and discuss the same issue?
Yeah, well, my response will be twofold. And one, had to be very careful when we reflect on the response or the attitude of foundations, because look, the foundation is led by just several people, and perhaps to a certain extent they are independent. But one would have thought that it's a foundation in the name of a former president. And when they make some of these pronouncements, that has reputational damage for this very important process that have been initiated by the government. And for me, it's not a case of parallel structures. Perhaps it will be multiple structures taking place, because in any case, South Africans, certain organizations will start to debate what is happening at or with the national dialogue, and perhaps also raise their opinions of that. So I foresee a situation where there will be a lot of multiple processes going forward. And the only question is, how will these discussions that are outside of the national dialogue filter into the report of that national dialogue? And the question is, who will be the custodian of this report that will be written at the end? If it goes to the presidency, for me, yet again, that for me will signal why some of us regard this as a futile exercise, because we have seen on numerous occasions, on numerous instances, how we can come up quite easily with commissions of inquiry, and when it comes to implementation, we look for other means to try and delay that particular process.
Professor Sethulego Matebesi, thank you very much for your time talking to us from Bloemfontein tonight.